President Trump's proposal to increase the budget for military spending by $52 billion, while there have been ongoing reports of misappropriation of funds by the Department of Defense, did not only help, as it only served to increase the calls for proper scrutiny and auditing of the Pentagon. This was even escalated by the revelation of another $125 billion of wasteful spendings by the DoD that was swept under the carpet by the Pentagon. The continuous fight between the idea of auditing the Pentagon and the constant request to increase their spending is no stranger at all, and it became increasingly clear that it required drastic measures for it to be done. It bore down from the fact that despite it being mandatory for an individual, company, or government agency, the Department of Defense has always boycotted the need for auditing. And the effect of this has been the unaccountable loss of $10 billion of taxpayers' money spanning from 1996 to 2016. The Pentagon took almost 22 years to get audited and repeatedly failed to uphold its series of promises during a better part of those years. However, it managed to get its budget doubled in the same time frame by the Congress. The Pentagon successfully avoided getting audited by taking it upon itself to explain how it will be financially unreasonable to collect data from everyone at the Pentagon and organize it. It stated how the whole process will be too cumbersome, time-consuming, and costly to the Government Accountability Office. Some of the unending misappropriations reported by the Office of the Inspector General included the $500 million aid to Yemen, $5.8 billion in supplies, $8,000 on helicopter gears that should have cost only $500. Notable Americans like Bernie Sanders and Ted Cruz made their discontents known, just like the reports and allegations about the mismanagement of funds were mounting against the DoD and were stating their support for the full audit of the Pentagon. Another person who voiced out against the fact that Pentagon was not audited was the Secretary of the Defense Department, Chuck Hagel, who in 2013 sent a video where he spoke out and stated the unacceptable nature of the department's nonconformity with the auditing process. Similarly, many other people have called for the redress of the whole issue. However, there was no tangible action taken until 2018. In a statement, Barbara Lee, a California representative, expressed her displeasure, stating that the legislators should go after the DoD, just as they normally go after other domestic agencies and community organizations tackling misappropriations. She even established a means with which the Pentagon can be financially penalized for their non-compliance with the auditing process. She calls it the bipartisan legislation. Some rightly ranted that the DoD should have been ready for the accountability process ever since the initial audit law was passed by the Congress, and that the delay of the long-awaited audit of the DoD may have borne down to many private contractors that had been hiding behind the scenes and exploiting Pentagon's trouble to their benefits. Most of them have been subtly getting in the way of auditing the Pentagon to cover their backs against accountability. The intimacy of the DoD and the private sector was what brought about the non-thorough auditing of the DoD, which was done in 2014. The audit was discredited a year later. The first of two audits of the Pentagon could not be any disappointing, as both exercises failed embarrassingly. It was even expected due to all the fuss about not wanting to undergo the process. Before the formal audit, the Pentagon acting accountant had already thrown in the towel, saying the department will be having an unfavorable result. He called it an overall disclaimer. It was not all gloomy for the DoD, though, as McCusker believes she could see real progress, and that the department has been cooperative by having all that is required, even though it has a material weakness. There were 24 individual audits in total, and it was led by the Inspector General of the DoD and the Accountant's Office. 7 of the audited units during the second audit were passed as clean, and it was one better than the previous year. The whole process took into account assets worth $2.9 trillion, liabilities worth $2.8 trillion, and the research yielded no evidence of fraud for the second straight year. Most people have written off the Department of Defense, and it was not surprising enough for them to learn the department failed its audits. However, what blew many minds away were the new sets of financial numbers posted. It was discovered that in the year 2019, the Pentagon had a $35 trillion account adjustment made, and this was way above the $30.7 trillion made in the previous year. Bloomberg's Anthony Carpaccio noted that these findings are large compared to the $738 billion of all U.S. defense-related funding slated in the budget. The most expensive weapons system that consists of F-35 jets, aircraft carriers, destroyers, and submarines, to mention a few, were all included in this spending plan. From the report, the Defense Department's insistent struggles and inability to balance its books were revealed despite boasting a budget larger than the U.S. economy. And this then brings us to the question that has been on some people's minds. What are these accounting adjustments that are worth $35 trillion? According to Todd Harian of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, the accounting adjustments can be said to be the representation of a series of double, triple, and quadruple counting of the same money, while it is passed between different accounts right within the Pentagon, which is hard to believe to some experts, because such a large organization like the Pentagon surely would have their books together, right? The audit done on the Pentagon reported the making of 562,568 adjustments in the Pentagon's book. From the result of the audit, it was discovered that there has been a persistent lack of control over the internal finances. The numbers highlighted shows why the Pentagon has not been able to properly account for its entire spending spree, even though it has the largest government budget. Comment below how you think the Pentagon spent the $35 trillion, or do you believe it's actually an accounting error of a teeny $35 trillion? And be sure to like and subscribe if you've liked it so far. The continued mismanagement of money by the Pentagon has been increasingly frustrating, and it has not shown any sign of relenting. This can be seen in NASA's decision to spend more on the Mars Science Laboratory, which is now $2.5 billion, triple its original intended budget. Some analysts believe that this move by NASA is a calculated one, in which they are sure any cancellation move will be met by a stern refusal in a bid to protect some local jobs. Aside from the Mars Science Laboratory, there are some on the endeavors through which funds have been leaking out of NASA. Other notable ones are the James Webb Space Telescope, NASA's two weather satellites. The former's estimate had risen from close to $1 billion to about $5 billion, while the latter's cost is now put at $3.5 billion each. The spike in cost starts with the scientists and engineers who often add more to the project, and this increases the cost above what's stated in the budget. Similarly, the trend is continued by the actions of the managers and contractors. They are the ones that encourage and accept these projects, with the aim of being bailed out if something gets wrong. The whole scenario gets worsened because of the managers who are fond of lying about the actual cost increases for projects. Scientists and Congress won't back down on these projects, as these will affect the U.S.'s image of being the leaders of space exploration. And this eventually births poorly executed programs that are taken care of by the other projects that meet up with the budget. All these unideal spendings have been having negative effects on the proposed missions to explore global climate change, early warning systems for earthquakes. It has slowed down the development of shuttle replacement, further strengthening America's inability to commission human space missions. For instance, America's once booming space program that boasts of many missions to the moon, comets, 5 planets, and comets during the better part of the 1990s has become stagnant due to the Mars overrun and its increasing cost of finance. Similarly, these projects have been favoring soaring costs rather than cost control, and the damages they have been doing to NASA's future portfolio cannot be overemphasized. It will be advisable for the necessary authorities to always come out clean about any cost increase instead of condoning cost escalations. Scientists and engineers should also only provide a scope fitting their budget, while NASA should have the conviction to reduce or cancel unfeasible projects, and Congress should uphold the ethics of responsible government to deliver results. This concept of being bailed out has become a standard practice, then being something of that requires disciplinary action, which has continued to other projects outside of NASA, such as the F-35 fighter jets. In conclusion, of course, in the real world outside the government and power virtually uncontrolled by anyone, just $1 trillion would be enough to send many people to jail. But here we are talking about more than $30 trillion, and it looks like this accounting black hole is bigger than most of the world's past and future economies itself, will be hidden and explained as just the little mistakes of some accountants in the DoD. And, of course, no one will be punished for it. Anyway, that's it for today, guys. Make sure to tell us how you believe that $35 trillion was actually spent, and not a mistake, because we find it hard to believe it to misplace $35 trillion by accident, too. And be sure to like and subscribe.